It's May 21st, 2024. I'm with World War II veteran, highly decorated, John Jeckovich, primarily from the Battle of the Bulge. And it is a new day. How was your day, Mr. Jeckovich?
Very good.
Okay, I'm going to be starting on page 506, the news of Renee's tragic death. I have a couple questions that came around the world I wanted to ask you. Do you feel like asking a few questions now, or should I pass?
Yeah.
You feel like it?
Yeah.
Okay. This one here is from Ghana, Africa.
Ghana, Africa.
From what?
It's from Ghana, Africa. Somebody's asking you a question.
What became of the German commandos dressed in American uniforms captured during the Battle of the Bulge? What became of the German commandos dressed in the American uniforms?
They were shot.
Is that what happened to them?
Yeah.
Okay, that goes out to Ghana. Here's a question here from the Philippines. During the Ardennes, ARDENNES, during the Ardennes offensive, which vital crossroad towns was held by the 101st Airborne?
Bastogne.
Bastogne.
Oh, okay.
Right there, Bastogne.
Yeah.
This one comes from Marina Del Rey, California.
Marina Del Rey, California question.
What do the members of the 101st Airborne Division all agree upon during the Bulge? What do all the members of the 101st Airborne Division all agree upon during the Bulge? Do they say the Germans used Royal Tiger tanks? Did they say the German army was finished? Did they say they needed better equipment? Did they not need to be rescued by Patton? So what would the 101st Airborne Division all agree upon about the Bulge?
They were into the rest of the guys that tapped in there, yeah.
Okay. This is from Dusseldorf, Germany. What primary factor finally worked against the Germans, ending the Battle of Bulge? What primary factor finally worked against the Germans, ending the Battle of the Bulge?
No equipment.
No equipment. This one is from Perth, Australia. What order was issued by some U.S. units learning of the Malmedy massacre? What order was issued by some U.S. units upon learning of the Malmedy massacre?
Looting, the French are looting, yeah.
Okay.
American probably too.
This one is from Toronto, Canada. Malmedy was the scene of a horrific massacre. Who was considered responsible for this atrocity? Was it the Piper's Battle Group, the German paratroop forces, the rogue SS troops, or the Scorsese commandos dressed as U.S. soldiers?
I would say the Germans.
Okay. This is from London, England. Germany was running out of manpower. Which type of new infantry division did they use in the Bulge? What type of infantry division did they use in the Bulge?
Well, they were there with the French and the Americans. They weren't alone there. They had the manpower there, we had the manpower there. The French had the manpower there.
How do you pronounce this? Ardennes. Ardennes? Ardennes. Ardennes?
Ardennes.
Okay, you familiar with the Ardennes?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's one right here from Miami, Florida. Where had the U.S. 28th Infantry Division been engaged before the Ardennes offensive?
Which division?
Where had the U.S. 28th Infantry Division been engaged before the Ardennes offensive?
48th.
Offensive.
Never heard of 48.
The 28th Infantry.
I never heard of 48.
28.
Oh, 28th?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Did you hear them?
Never heard of them, no.
Okay. Which of these describes the Allies' failure to anticipate a German offensive in the Ardennes? Improper planning, poor weather, overconfidence, inadequate reconnaissance. So which of these best describes the Allies' failure to anticipate a German offensive in the Ardennes? Improper planning, poor weather, overconfidence.
What was the second one?
It was improper planning, poor weather,
Poor what?
improper planning,
Yeah.
poor weather, overconfidence, or inadequate reconnaissance. Which of these best describes the
Poor weather.
Okay, poor weather.
Poor weather, poor weather, poor weather.
Second question. Another question. Why did the German tanks perform so badly in the Battle of the Bulge?
What'd they take?
Why did the German tanks perform so badly in the Battle of the Bulge?
The German tanks?
Yeah.
Well, they heard of the rumor that the Americans are throwing flamethrowers into their vents. And they didn't like that too much.
Did many soldiers freeze to death in the Battle of the Bulge?
Not too many, you know. I mean, I got frostbite, everybody got frostbite, I got frostbite yet.
About how many German soldiers died at the Battle of the Bulge?
How many?
About how many German soldiers died at the Battle of the Bulge?
Probably as many as the American and the French.
How many is that?
Probably a couple thousand. Ooh.
That's all right, just pick it up, pull it back. There we go. Okay, that's all the questions I got today, so I'll continue reading. Is there any comments you want to make before I read?
No.
Should I just start reading?
Go ahead.
Okay. Page 506, Renee's tragic death. My initial concern for Rose, well-being never wavered, as I believe she was sacrificing everything for her social status. Her inner tranquility, satisfaction, love for another, and lastly, desire to share one's life with someone you really cared for and loved. I thought it was too much to give up. So basically you're saying in these sentences that Rose was giving up everything to marry a guy with a suit and tie that had some social standing that she probably didn't love.
Yeah.
Okay. Evidently, she did not adhere, and instead she took upon herself to rectify her way of life for the better. She prayed, I hope she achieved that goal. She was torn between her true emotions and her driving almost desire to rid herself of the commonplace existence. So she was looking to do anything to climb the ladder of the social status.
Totally.
I only personified the ordinary life, so she desperately wanted to be rid of that. She wanted to remove herself from its grip, but could not entangle herself from its web. In a moment of desperation, she clutched at her first opportunity that presented itself. I only hope that she would not regret it. Did she later regret it?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I would always remember her as a warm, loving person caught up in a trap trying to break away from the beginnings and yet still abiding by the same factors that condition her so. I pray that she found the contentment and true love which she craved for long, and that the decision was made benefited her for the rest of her life. Rose has only magnified my predicament and only intensified my resolve to do something constructive, but what to do was always a conundrum. I was not timid. The Army showed me that. I could never think through a plan of action without feeling the pangs of guilt, and that mother would have to fend for herself, and she would feel that I deserted her. I always crept into anything I wanted to do, and it would feel helpless when it took hold of me and distorted my thoughts and eventually my behavior. Rose saw this was helpless to do anything about it. About this frustration on her past likely led her to the course of the events she chose for herself. I would become angry at myself when I became where mother was concerned. Surely I had done my share and then some. It was time to think about myself. But for some strange reason, I could never do that. Think only of myself. And I would always be familiar responsibilities in the forefront. Steve or Lookie were not overly concerned about mother, and they certainly were displaying. Well, hi, Claire.
Come on in and have a seat.
Come on in, Claire. You snuck up on us. We got seat reserved for you, Claire.
Some candy there too.
Hi,
We got
Claire.
some candy for you. You're looking well. Yeah, that's a girl. And have some candy there. Hand her a candy there. Those
Have
are
a
very
couple
good.
of
We just got them at Publix. Okay. We're still reading a book. My dad's in the at the mill, and the lady he was with wanted to marry someone with a suit and tie and not a mill worker. So she just picked anybody, married him, and then went to Wisconsin. So with no things, she wanted to marry someone with a suit and tie. An office job.
She didn't want to be a mill worker's wife.
She didn't want to be a mill worker's wife, yeah.
Well, that's because the mill workers' wives were clicking among themselves, and there was no great name to have to be a mill worker's wife.
Oh, well.
You know, that was, didn't give you any creds at all. Among each other it did, and then it was funny what earns you respect, shall we say,
Yeah.
among the wives.
That's a good point, Claire.
How your kids did was really important in figuring out what people thought of the
Okay.
wives,
Yeah.
how they dressed. Now, they're not going to be in the latest fashions, but they're grooming,
Right?
fancy hairdos,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
That's a good point, Claire. Well, anyway, Steve and Lookie were not overly concerned about mother, and they were certainly displaying the fruits of their self-interest. I knew for a fact they were both leaving the household permanently in a short while, which would leave me entirely alone here with mother and Sally. I dare say Sally would be leaving the first chance afforded her. Again, as with Stephen Lookie, without any undue concern for mother's welfare and well-being. So how long did your sister stay there before she left?
Whom?
Your sister Sally, how long did she stay there before?
Probably a couple of weeks until she left. Yeah.
She left quickly.
Yeah.
Where did she go?
Well, I don't know. She was hooked up with that Charles.
So she got married then.
Yeah.
For the first time, I felt a full impact of my future hit me with it quite forcibly. I was frightened by the prospect of it. I did not want to sit out the rest of my life nursing some kind of guilt feeling regarding my mother and father. I wanted a life of my own, and yes, a family of my own, away from all this distraction and aggravation. Up to this point, I had never met the test to be self-centered, and I think only my well-being, which should be a natural instinct, that I somehow never acquired. Anne had shown me my nature, and she put to me the test, and I failed miserably. I was aware of that, and I should have done, but could never follow through with it. There was always obstacles in the way of feelings to consider. I found myself thinking more and more of my future, and I did not like, if any, what I was to perceive. My job was unsatisfactory, and I was almost demeaning. With its shift work and people I had nothing in common with, I had no social life to speak of. My entire life consisted of working and looking out for Mother and Sally. I felt self-conscious in the attention I showered on Mother and Sally, almost to the manner of obliging father. It seemed like I was doing a doting son with nothing better to do. Mother would relish the attention, but not always said empathetically that she did not ask or want any special treatment. By the same token, if it was denied her or overlooked for some reason, she would sulk and become belligerent and contentious. So your mother would sulk a lot?
The what?
Your mother would sulk a lot? She'd be quiet, sulk a lot?
Sulk?
Your mother?
No, it didn't. You mean she went in the room and closed the door?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Okay. Shopping was another ritual endeavor. I would drive them to shopping and either wait for them or return at a later hour when they had completed their shopping. Seldom would I drive Mother to work unless the weather was bad, but I would usually pick her up from work when I was not working. You want to check the mail?
Yeah,
See if there are things for sale down there.
okay.
She would become distraught if I did not pick her up for some reason and would refuse to enter the car when I would be there the next day to pick her up. So you mean if you missed a day for some reason, and then when you went the next day to pick your mother up from work,
She wouldn't get in.
she wouldn't get in.
Yeah. She was neglected.
And so how'd she get home?
Walked.
And then when she got home, what was her demeanor like?
Quiet. Sulking. Yeah.
Even though she knows you're parked right in front of the,
Huh?
even though she knows you're parked right in front of where she works,
Yeah.
she wouldn't get in. Well, this would frustrate me considerably, I imagine, but would never deter me from doing what I thought I had to do. About the same time Rose was getting married in the middle of summer, where'd she get married at, Niagara Falls?
Yeah.
And then she took off to Wisconsin.
Yeah. Honeymoon city of the world.
Yeah, yeah. I was receiving some more disquieting news via the radio and newspapers of the fighting in Indochina. As I mentioned earlier, the Vietnam Liberation Army in their hostilities with the French were torturing and killing missionaries, sparing no one. In the wake of the destruction and mayhem following on an update, the New York Times ran an exclusive article on their listed and all known tortured and killed civilians as well as others in rather lengthy list. Renee, Sister Monique, name was posted on after the civilian casualties and the missionary clergymen. I still could not comprehend it fully. Renee's tragic death, it did not seem right that one person, with all her goodness and love in her heart, should meet such a painful and cataclysmic end. The life snuffed out after suffering much physical and mental pain in the hands of cruel and savage barbarians who nothing and cared less for her lofty and sacred goals. In the prime of her life, she went to this land with much love in her heart, only to be met with more cruel and devastating enemy that she encountered during the days in the resistance. What I was experiencing at home was nothing compared to what Renee was going through. She had given her life for some abstract goodness and divine enlightenment. We would have been better off if we had more of ourselves and lived our lives together. We would have been better off if we thought more of ourselves and lived our lives together, rather to inspire to some exalted intent. We had gone through all this many times before, but we were driven by forces more powerful than our comprehension could conceive. I surely was not content with my lot in life. Despite all my aspirations, I realized that no great satisfaction in my great mobility and uprightness had created for me. I was worse off than someone who had been driven by these conditions. Certainly Renee was worse off than someone who never had faith and compulsion. We had both lost, and one more dearly than the other, and that was the tragedy of our knowing one another. The news of the war in Indochina, and more directly Renee's part in it, had me upset and melancholy for weeks. Naturally, I could not say nothing of it at home, nor did I speak of it. It seemed unnatural to talk about it to my immediate family. The only comfort it gave me was to put in perspective Rose's departure, which he helped me to get over. Rose's departure more quickly. The very thought of Renee's warmth and love only diminished more rapidly whatever I felt for Rose. I found myself concentrating on the sentiment I still cherish for Renee than any other transient fleeting moments of the present with Rose. I was never meant to be, and I fully realized that from the outset. I tried to think of something besides Renee's plight, but each time...
No, ma'am.
How much?
No, ma'am.
How much?
That's not for sale.
But each time I thought I had under control. I would hear something on the radio or read it in the newspaper. My work did not help, since no one there even heard of Indochina, much less knew what was going on there. It was something I would have to bear alone and come to some kind of adjustment and resolve in my mind. It stayed with me for the longest period until finally, several years later, the French were pushed out of Indochina, and I knew it was all worth it. I was amazed at the unconcern of most people had regarding the war in Indochina. It was not until the Korean War in 1954, later that the war in Vietnam, the public sentiment changed and the entire country went through much more turmoil and anguish. Meanwhile, life went on. I was still working at the paper mill and detesting it. Lookie had left for the naval base after it had closed down and transferred to the Air Force Reserve at the base outside of town. Steve had graduated and was working for a glass company in Pittsburgh. What glass company was he working at?
Pittsburgh Plate Glass.
What was his position?
Probably a mediocre manager or something, yeah.
Was he in sales? Was he in sales? Was he in sales? at PPG?
Yeah. He was a salesman, that's all.
Like, what was the product? You say glass, but what was the product?
Windows.
Buildings or residential or commercial?
Yeah, both.
Did they also do car glass? Automobile glass? Automobile glass?
No, just residential.
Did he start off at a good salary?
I don't know what the salary was.
Mother was still on an old job, and Sally was getting ready to graduate from high school. Nothing had really changed at home, and I was frustrated in attempting to untangle myself from the web I had woven myself. Mother was perturbed that I did not go to Steve's graduation, but I really could not force myself to go. If I did not, it would be like adding insult to injury, something I just could not do. I was not surprised when Steve took the position in Pittsburgh. Evidently, it did not bother Mother either. We would visit him occasionally, and it appeared that he settled into very nicely without thought of anyone else but himself. I envied him for his focus and wished that I had inherited a portion of it. He would never ask about home or how we were making out, but he would only keep up a steady infusion about his present position and how valuable he was to the company. I thought it ludicrous that he should be that valuable after leaving school such a short time ago. I could see that he was just as same as ever. Mother saw it also, but a bit changed but said nothing. I did not like visiting Steve, and as the years slid by, I visited him less frequently and felt less and less guilty for my action. Mother felt the same way. We would never admit to it. She would never admit to it. Guilty is about my actions. She would always make some excuse defending Steve's action. It was only one of the few things we had an agreement on, but like anything else having to do with Mother, it was always a compromise. As my thoughts were frequently with Renee during this tumultuous period of the French and Indochina, it forced me to see little more clearly my own convoluted way of life. Thinking about the unselfish sacrifices Renee had made for the sake of her faith reminded me of the devotion I had witnessed in combat, where one would literally lay down his life for his comrades, not for any glory or accolades, but for the sheer humanism and compassion for his fellow human being. I saw this immediately in the service, where one who looked after his own, and I accepted it readily as I had at home. It was a code of conduct I learned and acquired in early life, and I had no problem developing it in the service. It was one of the few traits which made the service tolerable and gave its meaning and significance. The ideal was instilled in me, as it was Renee, and there was nothing else we could erase from our conscious selves. This is what was driving Renee to go to Indochina and giving up her life, and this was what was driving me to display towards my family. We could not do otherwise despite our wishes to the contrary. So I was endowed with this great gift of humanism and compassion. What were its rewards? Outside the usual one of reaching a state of equilibrium among my various feelings and social entity, there were none. As a matter of fact, there was more negative attributes associated with this phenomena than there were positive.
I think I brought up a great point.